Hello, Ann Jessie here from the Elyria Arts Council. Today I'm going to show you several different techniques using alcohol inks. If you're going to try all the techniques that I'm going to show you, there's quite a few supplies, so let me go through it. Of course, you're going to need some alcohol inks. You may need some saran wrap. You may need a variety of different size containers. They can be glass or plastic, whatever you want. Some paint brushes that you don't care if they get a little bit stained. Eyedroppers. Drinking straws. I have something to mix my ink in, and you can see that the wells in this are really little. You use small amounts of alcohol ink at a time, so it can be something small to mix with. I repurposed a little spray bottle from Glasses Cleaner. When it was empty, I filled it with alcohol. I am doing my alcohol ink project on some tiles, some ceramic tiles that were donated, and they're a variety of different colors. Alcohol ink is very versatile. You can do it on paper, watercolor paper or Yupo paper. You can do it on lucite. You can do it on ceramic. It works on a lot of different things. Now, you need some alcohol to work with, and it needs to be 91% alcohol. Don't forget paper towels. This is a little bit messy, and I put a lot of paper down on my table to absorb any drips, because you will have drips. Let me show you how to do it. So one of the first things I do when I start with alcohol inks is whatever surface that I am going to do my design on is I spray it with a little bit of that 91% alcohol, and I clean it off. Dust, even a tiny amount of dust, will maybe cause some of your effects to not work. And alcohol inks are very much about cool effects. And you can do many different things with alcohol inks. You can paint like you're painting with watercolors. But what I'm going to focus on are some quick, fun, special effects. So one of the first things that you can do is just simply take whatever color you'd like and drop some droplets on your surface. And the tiles that I'm working with are a variety of different colors because that's what we had on hand. Now you can see that the ink is spreading quite a bit, so you need to be conscious of, are your colors going to bleed into one another, and do you want that to happen? I really like spontaneous effects, so it doesn't really matter if they touch each other. Sometimes they do cool things when they touch each other. So I'm just going to fill this with a variety of inks, and I like lining up my inks in order and keeping them in order so that they're really easy to access. Boy, that one's really watery. Kind of cool though. Let's see. Maybe a little bit of green. Now, what I like to do is work on multiple tiles at a time, because it does take a little bit for this to dry. So I'm going to call that good for the moment and set it aside. And we're going to go back to this one. So I'm just going to set it over here to the side. And I'm going to show you something else that also needs to dry, and we're going to flip back and forth between these two. This is a really simple one. So I have a nice orange tile, so I want the orange to show through on what I'm going to work on. Now, you can mix a diluted alcohol ink because some of these are very intense colors, and if you do the droplet thing, your color might be a little too intense. So here's what I'm going to do. I'm going to pour a little bit of alcohol in one of my containers, and here's the thing, you got to work sparingly because this alcohol will dry up. So I try not to leave any open alcohol out, knowing that it's going to dry up. So I have a little bit of red in there, and I'm going to put what I think is about half red and half alcohol. And one of your tricks you can use is fill your eyedropper with the alcohol and prop it up on something, and that will keep it stored without it evaporating. So that's what I'm going to do. I'm going to fill a couple droppers with alcohol because we are going to use that in what we're working on. So here we go. I've got some red alcohol ink mixed with alcohol. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to coat this whole tile with red. And then I have to let it dry for an adequate amount of time. So you can see I put a paper towel down. The great thing about that is I can lift it up and move it aside and let it dry, and then I can work on my next one. I'm gonna go back to that first one. This is really cool, and I love this one here. I've let these dry for a decent amount of time. I'm kind of looking at it closely to make sure it doesn't look really wet. And then one of those little droppers that I filled with just alcohol, you can drop one little drop of alcohol in some of these droplets you put on here, and you can see what it does. It spreads out that color and makes kind of cool polka dots. And maybe I try not to go overboard because it gets everything blending, but it sure is a cool thing to experiment with. Okay? And you can always add more as you work. And the cool thing with this is, if you make something that you think is absolutely hideous, you can spray it with your sprayer, wipe the whole thing off with a paper towel, and start all over once your alcohol has dried from you cleaning it off. So I'm going to work on another one while I'm waiting for that diluted red one to dry more. Let's see, this one's really cool, and what you need to do is prop up your tile. So I'm going to face it away from me so maybe you can see it as it's happening here. I'm going to prop up my tile, and I'm going to simply drizzle some alcohol inks down, and I'm going to use my drinking straw to maybe encourage it to continue down. Looks like it's not having any problems at all going down. Mixing a couple of them, that looks cool. That's doing some cool stuff. This is a really fun project for any age, because you can see you don't have to do too much to get some neat effects happening. So maybe do another drop here. Ooh. And you can see that the ink coming out can be very drippy. So you may need to work on controlling it a little. I'm gonna throw some orange in there and hope it doesn't ruin it. Like mixed colors, yucky. Okay. So I'm gonna let this one dry, and then one of my special effects on this, I'll decide once I see what it looks like when it's dry. I'm gonna try one more thing here before I go back to my diluted red one. So what I'm doing is I'm gonna make some diluted colors, and I'm gonna brush onto this tile with some diluted colors. I think I'm gonna use red, blue, purple, and pink. So very quickly, I'm gonna dilute these colors with some alcohol. That I think is about half and half. So you can see having those eyedroppers filled with alcohol is very helpful. So I'm gonna streak some colors down this one. Maybe I don't even need a little bit of red in there. And then watch what I do very carefully with a paper towel while it's still wet. Try to dab some up, and it makes a cool pattern. So you can actually kind of print and stamp in your ink. Now, watch what happens when I spray it with my spray bottle. I want to not be too close and not spray too much. One little pump, and it made almost all of my ink disappear. Now I can go back into it and work it, or I can wipe it off and start again. But you can see I got some little polka dots. So if you did that with a really dark color, that would be really cool. So I'm gonna go back to that one. Let's, I'm gonna get a new paper towel. Let's go back to this red one. Simply watch what happens when I drop some drops of alcohol. So these two right here were 1 drop. This one ended up being 2. And you can also take the tip of a paintbrush and do it. All my brushes have been sort of contaminated, so see what's happening? Now I'm going to let that dry, and I may go in with more alcohol or another color, but that is very attractive just like it is. So I'm going to set that aside. We're going to try spraying this one that's been drying for a little. One little spray, and I kind of am raising my sprayer up high. One little spray and letting the alcohol drop onto it. And you can see I could barely see the alcohol dropping onto it, but you can see there's some speckles in there. I'm gonna do one more spray, sparingly. Ooh, that's cool. Check out what happened. Very nice. I can go back in and work it with a brush, whatever I wanna do. So I'm gonna get out my fan brush, and I'm going to try some techniques with the fan brush with some of this diluted ink that I already have in my, because I kind of want to use it up before it dries up. So I'm just dragging my fan brush across the tile and making lines. Now, watch what else I can do. I can do some cool like printing with this. And this brush, you can see, looks like a bad hair day, all spiky. So I'm going to use that to my advantage, and sort of looks like fireworks. Just do some droplets of something else. So you can see, if you have something that you don't think is spectacular, you can layer. And then, if you want to take it even further, you can, once this is a little dry, and it doesn't take much time to dry, you can start dropping some alcohol on it and see what happens. But that's very attractive. I like that a lot. So let's see what happens when we run some other colors with a thin brush through this line. There's all kinds of interesting things that happen with alcohol ink. And they're a lot of fun if you like spontaneous things happening with your art. And if you don't mind that colors do some mixing. Very quick, easy, fun, spontaneous artwork. Let me show you another one that's very cool. I have kind of a dark tile here. So what I'm going to do is get out a piece of Saran Wrap. Slightly bigger than my tile. Have it ready. I'm going to use some of the darker colors, not diluted. I'm only going to do about 3. Maybe a green. And you want to work quick with this one. Put your Saran Wrap on top of it. Oh, that one didn't turn out well. Whoops. So I'm going to lift it off. And it's super dark, so what I'm going to do is try it on another tile and see what happens. I'm going to take this Saran Wrap and see what happens. I like that a lot. Very cool. You could probably do this with bubble wrap too. I'm going to try it on one more tile because I think it's really cool what's happening. Hopefully it hasn't dried already. Oh yeah, I really like that. How cool is that? Ah! Very neat. Nice. Well, that was fun. How about that? So these tiles that I'm not real impressed with, I can go back and drop alcohol into them. I could paint with a paintbrush that has alcohol on the end of it, whatever I want to do. So here's one of the ones I did with Saran Wrap, and it got really, really dark and not a lot of effect. So what I did was I poured a little bit of alcohol ink, or I'm sorry, a little bit of rubbing alcohol in a cup, and I'm taking a liner brush and I'm going to try to just drag some lines through this and see what it does. Oh, dropped a little drips on there. Let's see what that does. So we got kind of an interesting effects happening here. So really, all you have to do is experiment and have fun. Here's a real simple one with the drinking straw. And you kind of got to work fast with this one. So get a couple drops of whatever color you want down, and then try and get like on top of your drop. And blow, and you'll get kind of a bursting dot going. And so I'm only going to do a couple colors, and I'm going to show you what happens when they overlap. So let me do some red down here, just a couple drops. One more dot of red. Now watch what happens when I add a little bit of yellow. Of course, yellow will mix with the red and blue to make different colors. So a couple drops of yellow. And we'll get some different colors going on there. And you can even do some on top of the color and give it a try. Getting kind of a dark green there. So you get kind of a cool starburst effect going with that. Try some orange. Just a little. And you can also use some of your rubbing alcohol and do some bursting effects with that too. But just do a drop because it will spread very fast. And of course the alcohol dries really, really fast. So you really have to work fast with that. But yet another way to do alcohol ink. Okay, so what I'm going to try and do with this one is show you how to do some concentric rings and do kind of a cool circle design. So I'm going to try and replicate this one, doing the same techniques I used to make that one. So what you need to do is take some little plastic containers of different sizes, or glass, it doesn't matter, and what you need to do is hold your container down, and with just a little bit of alcohol ink, so I'm using like 2 drops here, you need to put it around the rim of your container, and you're going to need to hold this for a while and let the alcohol ink dry. If you pick it up too early, the alcohol will bleed toward the center and you won't get like a true ring. So I'm going to hold this down for about a minute. And while I'm holding it down, I'm going to talk to you a little bit about safety in alcohol inks. When you're using alcohol inks, you're going to get, especially with the 91% rubbing alcohol, you are going to get fumes. You need to be very careful. No candles lit, no smoking. You shouldn't be in a small room. You need to have ventilation. The first time I worked on this, I had a ceiling fan going and multiple windows open so that fumes wouldn't build up. You can do it outdoors. This is a perfect time to work with alcohol inks outdoors. And I've done like a girls' day where we've had like a little picnic outside, and my friends and I did alcohol inks outside on the back porch, and we had a blast, and there were absolutely no fumes because we were outside. So you do have to be careful. If you have a gas stove with a pilot light, you know, you need to be aware not to be working near that because, you know, fumes can build up after a while. So I'm going to pull this off, and likely my orange is going to bleed toward the center a little bit, but we still should get a pretty nice ring. So you can see I got kind of a nice ring, and this is where I did my droplets, so it bled outward. So you do have to be kind of sparing when you're doing this. So let me do a blue ring here on the edge. And you really kind of need to hold it down tight. And it looks like it went all the way around. The rim of that cup allows that alcohol to kind of bleed and follow the ring of the cup, the rim of the cup. So I should get a pretty nice ring there. Okay, so I think I've been holding this for long enough, so I'm lifting up the blue one. And we're going to try and do the purple one, the purple ring around the orange. Okay, so I think that one was, here we go. It's called Purple Twilight. So I held this ring on the purple cup for a good couple minutes, and you can see that it's still wet. I'm going to turn it just quickly here. You can see that it's still wet, but it's not bleeding. So what I did for these little red rings was I took It's a little tiny cap from a one of those technical drawing pencils, and the cap went over the top of the eraser. So let me show you what happens. I'm going to dip this in some red ink, because when I tried it with doing a drop around it, it just made a big blob. So what I'm going to do is dip it and test it on a surface. And then I'm going to use it to print with. And I want you to see what happens. I did 3 on the same dip. So I did 1, that's almost a full dot, 2, and 3. So you can see what happens. It really bleeds a lot. Now if you're really quick, you can get them to be rings and not bleed too much. Now I did it overlapping on the purple and I really liked what it did. So I'm going to do some more of that for you, and I'll show you close up in just a sec. Whoops, it's stuck. So take a look what it did. So they're not exactly alike. But what I did on this one is I had a lot of bleeding, so I dropped just a couple drops of alcohol down to add some extra effect to that. So let me do that. So you can see, I'm gonna try and do tiny amounts because I don't want too much to bleed. And it can be really hard to do tiny amounts with these drops of alcohol and an eyedropper. I see that some people use the tip of a paintbrush, or they have like a micro tiny eyedropper. So there you go. So I hope you give this project a try. I'm going to tell you, alcohol inks are kind of expensive, but they go a very, very long way. You're using drops at a time. Some of these alcohol inks that I'm using, I've been using for various projects with Kids Art Drop-In, and just doing a few experiments myself, and I've had these inks for like 3 years. So, you know, even though they're expensive, I wouldn't let that deter you from trying this project, because, you know, they do go a very long way. What I'm going to try and do at the end of the video here is take some, I've done quite a few tiles, and I'm going to take some grouping pictures and try and identify the technique that I used, because I know I showed you an awful lot of techniques, and I'd like you to be able to keep them straight. So I'm going to try and do that for you. I hope you try this project. I hope you enjoyed the video. We'll see you next time.